Hey guys, it's Paul Myers, licensed professional counselor, owner of Intentional Counseling. I'm going to cover both bipolar 1 and borderline personality disorder today. I'm just going to show you the difference between the two based on the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders number 5. So I'm just going to run down the diagnostic criteria of both. These are generalizations. I do find that these two disorders get misdiagnosed quite frequently. So I'm just going to show you the diagnostic criteria for each one and really break down what they are so you can have an overview understanding of it. Remember not to self-diagnose because people very frequently make these loose associations. So if you're ever not sure, make sure to just get a formal evaluation done from a psychologist. Okay? They're the ones who spend 8 years in training, experience, and schooling and education to be able to really understand these disorders fully. But here we go. So I've got borderline first. Let's cover borderline personality disorder. First of all, personality disorders are very difficult to diagnose. They're a lot harder to pin down. They're more subjective, okay? And so really what borderline fundamentally is a pervasive pattern. That means it's consistent, and it really manifests itself in a variety of ways in all areas of their life. And so there's this pervasive pattern of instability in their relationships, interpersonal relationships. And it's really defined by mood, self-identity, and impulsivity. Okay? So that's the overview of that. So let's look at some symptoms or diagnostic criteria more specifically. I think the instability with mood is common. Instability with identity is part of it, right? Like they don't know who they are. Their identity shifts and changes a lot. Impulsivity could really come out in a variety of ways and make rash choices that are really detrimental, okay? So one aspect is this paranoid ideation. It's very fleeting, very temporary. It's usually stress-induced and transient. So it's basically, it doesn't last very long and is very quick and flash in the pan. There's dissociative symptoms a lot of the time. A lot of the time people that have BPD definitely have some form of trauma or abuse in their background. So there's some disassociation symptoms, which is typically a trauma symptom or a response to trauma to cope. Whereas dissociation is when you just detach emotionally or psychologically, either from yourself or from reality, or both. But that's very common. You separate things from things. Okay? We've got this deep sense of abandonment, and so really, borderline personality disorder, they're just trying to avoid abandonment really at all costs, and they'll really go to extensive lengths to avoid abandonment or prevent being abandoned. Okay? So a lot of the time this fear is irrational, like it's not actually happening. They're just afraid of it happening. So they kind of manifested their fears into the relationship. And it's really potent and very excessive. This makes it sound really mild, but look at it in a really intense, extreme perspective for this to really count, right? Not like, oh yeah, I'm afraid of being abandoned, so that's me. No. Like fear of abandonment as in like I'll threaten to hurt myself to keep you in the relationship, to really manipulate the situation. So you see the difference how intense it could be versus a more mild symptom. It's got to be very intense, okay? Nothing about this is mild. Okay, so then we have a reoccurrent suicidal behavior, okay? Suicidal ideation is guaranteed with this disorder. They're quite frequently thinking about this, and they kind of waver off and on with it. So it's reoccurring. Some people attempt, some people just think about it, some people plan. There's a lot of levels of this, but it is a reoccurring theme. Okay. There's also chronic feelings of emptiness. They never really actually, no matter what they do or how hard they try, they never really actually feel that sense of connectedness that they long for. It's almost like an empty void that never gets filled. Mostly because the relationship can't actually do that for them. There's just, the emptiness is about their own individual struggles that they have to work through and become secure in themselves, okay? So, last thing is intense and frequent inappropriate anger. So massive flashes of anger, huge outbursts, and it's a consistent theme. These are really damaging, many times abusive, but that is one key component, okay? Okay, let's cover bipolar 1, okay? Bipolar has a whole spectrum. It is technically a mood disorder, but there's a whole spectrum here. I'm just going to cover bipolar 1 because I find it to be really potent, because you have full manic episodes and full depressive episodes. So it's really two different things put into one disorder, meaning the qualifications of a manic episode as well as major depressive disorder. Okay, so let's cover manic episode. So manic episode is 1 week minimum of, or more, of elevated mood. It's persistent, it's elevated. Okay, now elevated mood has a lot of symptoms. Okay, so one of which would be like expansive thinking, where, like, let's say I don't have any money yet, I go on this really fancy vacation that costs, $8,000 or something like that. It's just very expansive. You see how not in touch with reality it is, right? But they really think it's a good idea, okay? And they're very genuine, right? So another one's irritability. I wake up and I'm just very angry, and it's really unexplainable. Like there's no reason, okay? I've seen this. It's a very goal-directed behavior. Like I'm gonna spend $3,000 on Amazon and buy, all this woodworking equipment and turn my garage into a woodworking shop, and be genuine and actually do it all, in 3 days, right? Okay. High energy, excessive energy, where you're doing, and it's got to go somewhere. So the energy can be put high elevated self-esteem or grandiose thinking, where I'm invincible. Like they really think they're invincible. Okay. Or like a decreased need for sleep. Like you can get 3 hours of sleep and actually not be tired. I've seen this where you work out multiple times a day, like work out 3 times a day, exercise, because they have all this extra energy. It's got to go somewhere. Okay. Increase in the amount of words you're using and being more talkative. So just, constantly going and going and going and talking. Usually it's, their speech is kind of sped up. Okay. Racing thoughts. They have a lot of thoughts per minute. A lot of it's intrusive, but they're just going really fast. Distractibility kind of resembles ADD. I've seen ADD and bipolar get misdiagnosed a lot. So like a manic episode sometimes can appear like ADD, but it's not at all. It's nothing like that. But this distractibility portion is in the manic episode. And the last one is increased risk taking. So, for example, trying drugs that they've never done, or stealing or breaking a law just to get a thrill, or doing something dangerous on purpose to get a thrill, to get that rush. Okay, so that's a manic episode. Let's cover major depressive disorder, which is also a second component to this. You have to have both to meet the requirement. Okay, so we need 5 symptoms or more here and it has to be 5 symptoms or more specifically within a 2-week period for it to really meet the criteria for this disorder. Okay. And again, pervasive patterns. So it's not just a one night and then you're fine. It's kind of an ongoing thing. So we've got depressed mood. Everyone I think knows what that is. You're kind of feeling down, you're feeling sad, you're feeling hopeless. Okay. We've got decrease in pleasure and enjoyment. So I've seen a lot of the time somebody really enjoys a hobby like golf, and then when they're depressed, they don't have any interest in doing that. They're like, doesn't sound fun at all. That doesn't do it for me anymore. Right? Another one would be a drastic change in your sleeping and your eating habits. Okay, so for example, I am not hungry at all, so I just don't eat anything, or I eat very little. But my sleep is just increased, where I'm just sleeping excessively, right? 14, 15 hours of sleep, okay? Or I've seen it the other way around, where they lose a ton of weight because or they gain a ton of weight because they're eating a lot and then not sleeping. So those are usually inversed but not always, right? Okay. Psychomotor restlessness or psychomotor like being lethargic. So again, that usually kind of goes with these two, right? If I'm, like slowed down and kind of lethargic about everything, or if I'm just, restless and going like an Energizer bunny. Okay. A decrease in energy levels is typically a depressive symptom where you're not feeling it. You don't want to get out of bed. You don't really want to do anything. You don't feel like it. You have no motivation. Next one would be excessive guilt, like unnecessary guilt. Like you didn't do anything wrong, but you're feeling guilty anyways. Or feeling really worthless. So your way of thinking could be feeling worthless and feeling guilty for no reason. Okay, and it's different than how you normally are. Like how you're not just living that way all the time. You're just thinking this way because it's part of the disorder. Okay. Concentration and decisiveness are going down. So my ability to concentrate and my ability to decisive decrease. I become indecisive and I struggle to concentrate and to focus. Okay. Again, resembles ADD, but is not. It's very different. Okay. And the last one is suicidal ideation, which we've talked about. The types of suicidality is very similar to the borderline, because you're either thinking about it, planning, or making an attempt. Okay. All right. So that you have to have both. So I meet the qualifications to actually say that I have this. Okay. Versus borderline, much more subjective, a lot harder to diagnose. But look at it like the severity is really intense. These disorders are very potent, and because of that, they're not as common as people think they are. So I would say bipolar gets frequently misdiagnosed when people really don't actually have it. Typically you're going to know if you have it, because it's really, you see how potent this can be. So you're going to really know. It's very obvious. To me, it's very obvious when someone has it. Okay. Because it's not this lighthearted thing that it's not a diagnosis you just toss out. So it is rare, okay? And borderline, I would say, is even more rare because it's even more difficult to diagnose, okay? Personality disorders are challenging to diagnose. There's so many intricacies. If I'm really doing a proper diagnosis, I'm going to interview every single member of their family. I'm going to interview their friends. I'm going to interview everyone that they know. I'm going to collect all this data. I'm going to spend 6 months of working with this person and really get to know them. Before I'm going to conclusively say that you have that. Okay, so it is rare. So don't take these lightly. Don't toss them around. I think we tend to minimize these two disorders. Or we overgeneralize it. Oh, yeah, that's me. Yeah, I have mood swings. That's me. I'm bipolar, right? Versus, no, let's really break it down, because when you measure it appropriately from a scientific perspective, you'll realize how rare it really is. Okay, guys? Hopefully you find this helpful. Please subscribe. That helps us grow. And the more people we help, the better. Also, if you have any comments, we'd love to hear from you. Questions, concerns, comments. That helps get this conversation going, which I find would help other people. Okay. Lastly, go to intentional-counseling.com if you haven't done therapy. Either myself or a trained therapist could help you in person or via telehealth if you live in Texas. All right, guys. Thanks for stopping by. Take care.